Stop for a moment. Not everything Allah sees is treated the same. Some deeds are written and left there. Some actions are recorded and forgotten by the heart that performed them. And then there are rare moments so sincere, so uncalculated, so free of ego that they change where a person stands in destiny. Ibn ʿArabi teaches that Allah does not look at what people see. He looks at what moved inside you when no one was watching. What you did was not loud. It was not impressive. It did not seek reward. But it was real. And that is why things are beginning to feel different. You may not understand it yet. You may not even be able to explain it. But something has shifted not outside of you, but around you. This is not coincidence. This is not imagination. And this is not for everyone. This message is about why Allah was aware of your deed, why silence followed instead of signs, and why your life cannot unfold the same way anymore. Listen carefully, because once you understand this, you will stop questioning what is happening and start walking forward without fear. 1. Allah sees intention before action. Expanded, deep, gripping, Ibn ʿArabi perspective. Ibn ʿArabi teaches something that most people never fully understand. Even after a lifetime of worship, the true beginning of every deed is not the body, but the heart. What you did mattered not because of what was done, but because of where it came from inside you. Most people believe intention is a sentence they repeat in their mind. Ibn ʿArabi says this is a misunderstanding. Intention is not a statement. It is a state of alignment. It is the moment when the heart, the will, and the trust in Allah come into harmony before the body even moves. Allah does not wait for the action to be completed. He sees the intention while the servant is still deciding. Before your hands moved, before your tongue spoke, before your feet stepped forward, the reality of your heart was already known. That is why the response did not depend on how perfect the action looked, how impressive it appeared, or whether anyone noticed it. The unseen had already responded before the seen caught up. Ibn ʿArabi explains that many actions die before they ever reach Allah because the intention behind them is divided. Part of the heart wants Allah, another part wants recognition, another part wants safety, another part wants control. When intention is split, the action becomes weak, no matter how large it looks on the outside. But when intention is unified, when the heart turns in one direction, only the action carries weight far beyond its size. What you did was not loud. It was not dramatic. It may not even look significant to anyone else, but it came from a place of inner truth. There was no bargaining with Allah, no demand for outcomes, no expectation of reward, just sincerity. That is why it was seen. Ibn ʿArabi teaches that Allah's awareness is not delayed and it is not reactive. Allah does not notice later. The awareness is immediate, precise, and complete. The moment your heart settled into truth, the unseen acknowledged it. This is why some people perform countless acts and feel nothing change, while another person performs one quiet act and their entire life begins to shift. It is not favoritism. It is alignment. Your action mattered because it was not forced. It was not done out of fear of people. It was not done to prove faith. It was done because, in that moment, your heart chose Allah without negotiation. That choice is rare, and rarity carries consequence. Ibn ʿArabi says that when a servant reaches sincerity without self-awareness, meaning they are not watching themselves being sincere, Allah draws them closer without announcing it. The person may not even realize what they triggered. They only feel that something has changed. Doors feel different. Silence feels heavier. Life feels more intentional. This is not imagination. This is the effect of intention being accepted before action. Understand this clearly. Allah did not respond to your effort. He responded to your truthfulness. Effort can be imitated. Truth cannot. And once a servant tastes this level of sincerity, the path ahead changes. Accountability increases. Awareness deepens. Life becomes more meaningful, even when it becomes more demanding. This is why what you did was not ordinary. It was not the action that moved destiny. It was the heart behind it. When you are ready, say, "Next lesson," and I will expand lesson 2 with the same depth and intensity. 2 small deeds can carry massive weight. Expanded, deep, gripping Ibn Arabi perspective. Ibn Arabi dismantles one of the most dangerous illusions people carry in their faith, the belief that impact is measured by size. The world teaches you that only large sacrifices matter, that only visible struggle counts, that only dramatic change deserves divine attention. Ibn Arabi says this way of thinking blinds the heart. In the unseen, weight is not calculated by scale. It is calculated by presence. A single quiet act performed with full awareness can outweigh years of habitual worship performed on autopilot. Why? Because habit numbs the heart, while presence awakens it. Allah does not count movements. He weighs realities. Most deeds are light because the heart is absent while the body moves. Words are spoken without awareness. Actions are taken without surrender. Worship is performed while the mind is elsewhere. These deeds are recorded, but they do not move anything. But when a deed is small and the heart is fully present, it becomes dense in the unseen. It carries gravity. It bends what comes next. What you did may look insignificant even to you. You may think, "That was nothing. Anyone could have done that." Ibn Arabi warns against this thought. When Allah allows a servant to underestimate their own deed, it is often because the weight of that deed is not meant to be measured by the servant. If you truly understood its weight, ego would enter. So understanding is withheld. Ibn Arabi explains that Allah sometimes hides the value of a deed from the one who performed it, while allowing its effects to unfold quietly over time. This is protection. Protection from pride. Protection from expectation. Protection from entitlement. Small deeds done with sincerity disturb the unseen because they break the ego's logic. The ego believes value comes from recognition. Sincerity proves value exists without witnesses. This is why the most powerful shifts often come from moments no one clapped for. No one praised, no one documented, no one validated, just you and Allah. And that is precisely why it mattered. Ibn Arabi teaches that Allah loves hidden acts not because they are hidden, but because they are free. Free from performance, free from comparison, free from self-image. When an action is free, it travels farther in the unseen. This is also why, after such deeds, life often feels strangely heavier before it feels lighter. Not because something went wrong, but because gravity has increased. The heart has stepped into a deeper orbit of responsibility. Small deeds do not always produce immediate ease. Sometimes they produce realignment. Your action carried weight because it was done without calculation. You did not stop to ask how it would look. You did not delay to optimize the outcome. You did not negotiate the reward. You acted, and that purity is rare. Most people wait for certainty before acting. Sincere people act without certainty and trust Allah with the result. That trust is heavy in the unseen. This is why things now feel different. The path feels narrower. The silence feels louder. Choices feel more consequential. This is not pressure. It is depth. Understand this. What moved was not the size of your deed, but its density. A dense deed reshapes the flow of destiny, even when it appears small on the surface. That is the danger and the honor of sincerity. Once you act from that place, you cannot return to shallow living. When you are ready, say next, and I will expand lesson 3 with the same depth and seriousness. 3. Allah responds to truth, not performance. Expanded, deep, gripping, Ibn Arabi perspective. Ibn Arabi makes a sharp distinction that most people never examine: the difference between acting for Allah and acting around Allah. On the surface, they look identical. The prayer is prayed, the sacrifice is made, the words are spoken. But in the unseen, they are worlds apart. Performance is when the body moves while the heart watches itself move. Truth is when the heart moves and the body simply follows. Allah does not respond to spiritual performance because performance is centered on the self. Even when it uses religious language, it quietly asks, "How do I look? How am I being seen? What will this bring me?" The action may be correct in form, but its direction is divided. Ibn Arabi warns that the ego is most dangerous when it disguises itself as devotion. A person may worship intensely, yet remains spiritually stagnant because the action never leaves the orbit of the self. Allah is not absent in such actions, but He is not moved by them. Truthful action is different. It is not polished. It is not optimized. It is often clumsy, quiet, and unseen, but it comes from a place where the self is absent. There is no internal commentary, no self-observation, no silent demand for results. This is why Allah responds to truth. Your action mattered because it was not staged, even internally. You were not trying to feel spiritual. You were not trying to prove sincerity. You were not watching yourself be good. You simply acted from what was real in that moment. That is rare. Ibn Arabi teaches that when an action is truthful, it aligns the servant with reality as it is, not as they wish it to be. And when a servant aligns with reality, Allah opens the next step without explanation, not as reward, but as continuation. Performance seeks outcome. Truth accepts consequence. This is why, after such actions, life does not always become easier. Sometimes it becomes more demanding. The path narrows, options fall away, comfort disappears. Not because Allah is displeased, but because truth removes illusions. Performance builds an image. Truth dismantles it. Ibn Arabi says Allah removes veils gently for those who perform, but firmly for those who act in truth. Firmness is not punishment, it is clarity, and clarity is uncomfortable for a heart accustomed to hiding. What you did forced clarity. You may notice that distractions no longer satisfy you the same way. Conversations feel shallow. Certain ambitions lose their appeal. This is not loss, it is alignment. Truth is reorganizing your priorities without asking your permission. Allah responds to truth because truth does not argue, it does not negotiate, it does not demand signs, it simply stands. And when a servant stands in truth, Allah meets them without delay. This is why your action did not require explanation, it required acceptance. Something in you aligned, and something in the unseen moved accordingly. Performance waits to be acknowledged. Truth is acknowledged before it even knows it was seen. That is why this moment feels heavy and quiet at the same time. Something has ended, something has begun, and there is no applause in between. When you are ready, say next, and I will expand Lesson 4, some actions change the order of events with the same depth and seriousness. 4. Some actions change the order of events. Expanded, deep, gripping, Ibn Arabi perspective. Ibn Arabi teaches a reality that unsettles the mind but awakens the heart. Not everything in your life unfolds in a fixed, unchangeable sequence. Many people assume destiny is a straight line, locked from beginning to end. Ibn Arabi says this is only partially true. There are events that are fixed, and there are events that are conditional. Conditional events wait for a certain inner state before they are released. They are not delayed by time, but by readiness. The moment readiness appears, the order of what comes next changes. This is why two people can walk the same path for years, perform similar actions, and yet one suddenly experiences a shift while the other remains where they are. It is not randomness. It is alignment meeting condition. What you did met a condition. Ibn Arabi explains that Allah does not change His knowledge, but He changes what the servant is allowed to enter. When a servant's inner state reaches sincerity, submission, and truth without demand, Allah moves them into a different sequence of unfolding. The world sees this as sudden. The unseen sees it as overdue. This is why certain doors closed abruptly after your action. Not slowly, not gently, abruptly. The order could no longer remain the same. Staying would have meant stagnation. Leaving was not punishment. It was necessity. Some people mistake this for loss. Ibn Arabi calls it repositioning. When Allah changes the order of events, He is not reacting to your action as a judge reacts to a crime. He is responding as a guide responds to readiness. A guide does not wait when the student is prepared. He moves them forward. This is also why relief and difficulty can arrive together. The heart feels lighter, but life feels heavier. Clarity increases, but comfort decreases. This tension is not contradiction. It is transition. Ibn ʿArabi teaches that when a new sequence begins, the old sequence must collapse. The collapse feels chaotic only because the servant is still attached to the timing of the past. In reality, what is collapsing has already served its purpose. What you triggered was not an ending, but a reordering. Events that were meant to happen later may now arrive sooner. Lessons that were meant to come gently may now come firmly. Relationships that no longer match your inner state may fall away without explanation. This is not Allah being harsh. This is Allah being precise. Precision feels unforgiving to a heart that wants delay. But to a heart that has acted in truth, precision is mercy. Understand this carefully. You did not change destiny by force. You aligned with it, and alignment removes delays that no longer serve growth. Ibn ʿArabi says that when a servant accepts Allah's will without conditions, Allah removes unnecessary steps. The path becomes shorter, not easier. This is why you may feel like time has compressed, like things are moving faster than you expected, like life is asking more of you than before. This is not acceleration for punishment. It is acceleration for fulfillment. Some actions do not bring reward. They bring responsibility. You are now walking in a sequence that requires awareness. The margin for distraction is smaller. The cost of insincerity is higher. The benefit of truth is immediate. That is the price and the honor of changing the order of events. When you are ready, say next, and I will expand Lesson 5. Being seen by Allah is not about favoritism with the same depth and seriousness. 5. Being seen by Allah is not about favoritism. Expanded, deep, gripping, Ibn ʿArabi perspective. Ibn ʿArabi is very clear on a point that protects the heart from a dangerous misunderstanding. Allah noticing a servant does not mean Allah prefers one person over another. Favoritism is a human idea. It belongs to limited vision, emotional bias, and comparison. Divine response operates on a different principle entirely. Allah responds according to capacity, not status. Two people may stand in the same prayer. One leaves unchanged, the other leaves transformed. This difference is not because Allah loved one more than the other. It is because one heart was able to carry more truth in that moment. Ibn ʿArabi teaches that Allah does not give according to desire, but according to readiness. When a servant becomes inwardly capable of holding a deeper responsibility, Allah allows them to experience a deeper response. Until that capacity exists, withholding is mercy, not denial. This is why many people pray sincerely for years and feel unseen, while another person performs a single act and everything begins to move. It is not because one is more righteous. It is because one has reached a point where response will not corrupt them. Favoritism gives gifts that inflate the ego. Readiness receives responses that increase humility. Your action mattered because it did not come with entitlement. You did not feel owed anything. You did not assume closeness. You did not demand proof. You acted, and you left the outcome with Allah. That posture is rare, and it creates space for response without damage. Ibn ʿArabi explains that Allah is careful with those He draws nearer. Nearness is not comfort, it is exposure. The closer a servant is brought, the more clearly they see themselves. This clarity can break a heart that is not prepared. So Allah waits. He waits until the servant's sincerity is quiet, until gratitude is natural, until humility is stable. Only then does He allow the servant to feel seen. This is why being noticed often arrives without celebration. No announcement, no sign that others can see. Just an internal shift and a reordering of life that feels both weighty and intimate. If this were favoritism, it would feel empowering. But what you feel is sobering. That sobriety is proof that this is not ego-driven attention. It is responsibility being entrusted. Ibn ʿArabi says that when Allah draws a servant closer, He increases their awareness of consequences. Words carry more weight, choices echo louder, negligence costs more. This is not punishment. It is precision. Precision is given only to those who can bear it. This is why comparison becomes dangerous at this stage. Looking at others and asking, "Why me?" or "Why not them?" pulls the heart back into ego. Ibn ʿArabi warns that comparison dissolves sincerity faster than sin. Your path is not a statement about others. It is a response to your state. Allah's awareness of your deed does not place you above people. It places you under responsibility. The more clearly you are seen, the more carefully you must walk. This is why humility must increase now, not confidence. Silence must deepen, not explanation. Gratitude must stabilize, not excitement. Being seen by Allah is not a privilege to display. It is a trust to protect. When you are ready, say, "Next," and I will expand Lesson 6. Silence is often the sign of acceptance with the same depth and seriousness. 6. Silence is often the sign of acceptance. Expanded, deep, gripping Ibn ʿArabi perspective to 5,000 characters. Ibn ʿArabi teaches something that directly contradicts what most people expect from Allah. Acceptance does not always arrive with signs, relief, or reassurance. Very often, acceptance arrives as silence. And that silence is misunderstood by those who are not prepared for it. People are conditioned to look for confirmation. They want clarity, emotion, visible change, or immediate ease. When none of that appears, they assume something is wrong. Ibn ʿArabi says this assumption comes from projecting human expectations onto divine response. Allah does not need to announce acceptance. Silence is not absence. Silence is stability. When a deed is rejected, agitation usually follows. The heart becomes restless. The mind demands reassurance. Doubt multiplies. The servant feels the urge to repeat, to prove, to push harder. Noise increases when something is unresolved. But when a deed is accepted, Ibn ʿArabi explains that Allah often settles the heart instead of exciting it. There is no rush, no emotional surge, just a quiet gravity that descends and stays. That gravity is not emptiness. It is grounding. This is why, after what you did, you may have expected something dramatic to happen, and instead, you were met with stillness. No immediate breakthrough. No clear explanation. No sign that you could point to and say, "This is it." That stillness is not rejection. It is containment. Ibn ʿArabi teaches that Allah protects sincere deeds by placing them in silence. If every accepted act were followed by visible reward, the ego would immediately attach itself to the outcome. Silence shields the deed from corruption. The heart that has acted truthfully does not need applause. It needs preservation, and preservation happens in quiet. This silence can feel heavy to those who are used to emotional validation. It can feel uncomfortable, even unsettling. The mind asks, "Did anything happen at all?" Ibn ʿArabi answers this indirectly. If nothing dramatic happened, it is because nothing needed to be corrected. Silence means alignment. When Allah accepts a deed, He does not always change circumstances immediately. Sometimes He changes how the servant stands inside those circumstances. The outer world may look the same, but the inner posture is different. Patience deepens. Distractions lose their grip. Certain desires weaken without effort. These are not coincidences. They are signs meant only for the one experiencing them. Ibn ʿArabi says that the closer a servant is drawn, the less Allah explains Himself to them. Explanation is for beginners. Silence is for those who can carry trust without understanding. This is a critical point. If Allah were displeased, restlessness would increase. Anxiety would grow louder. The heart would feel scattered. But what you feel is not chaos, it is weight, a seriousness that was not there before, a sense that life is asking something of you, even without words. that seriousness is not fear. It is responsibility awakening. Silence is also a test, not of faith, but of patience. Can the servant remain sincere without feedback? Can they continue walking without reassurance? Can they trust without proof? Ibn ʿArabi teaches that Allah uses silence to separate those who worship outcomes from those who worship Allah Himself. Those attached to outcomes become frustrated. Those attached to Allah become still. Your stillness is telling. Silence also slows the servant down. It prevents premature action. It stops the ego from rushing ahead and claiming progress. In silence, the heart learns to wait without tension. This waiting is not inactivity. It is attentiveness. When Allah accepts a deed, He may delay visible change not because He is distant, but because He is near. Nearness requires precision. Precision does not move loudly. Understand this clearly. Noise is often a sign of instability. Silence is often a sign of order. What you are experiencing is not emptiness. It is containment. Something has been placed within you that does not need exposure yet. It is being protected from others and from yourself. This is why Ibn ʿArabi says that the most dangerous moment after sincerity is haste, wanting to move, to speak, to act again too quickly. Silence teaches restraint, and restraint preserves acceptance. Do not mistake quiet for delay. Do not mistake stillness for denial. Some responses are meant to unfold slowly so they remain intact. This silence is not asking you to do more. It is asking you to stay true. When you are ready, say next, and I will expand Lesson 7, The Unseen Moves Before the Seen with the same depth and intensity. 7. The unseen moves before the seen. Expanded, deep, gripping Ibn ʿArabi perspective to 5,000 characters. Ibn ʿArabi insists on a truth that reshapes how a believer understands change. Nothing visible ever moves first. What appears sudden, accidental, or chaotic in the physical world is almost always the final stage of a process that began quietly in the unseen. People assume that events cause inner change. Ibn ʿArabi teaches the opposite. Inner alignment causes events. Before doors close in the world, they close in the unseen. Before paths open outwardly, permission is granted inwardly. Before comfort is removed, attachment is already weakened. This is why real change often feels confusing when it begins. The servant senses movement, but cannot yet point to evidence. Something feels different, but nothing looks different. The heart feels displaced, while the environment remains the same. This is not imagination. It is transition without confirmation. What you did initiated unseen movement first. The response did not begin in your circumstances, it began in positioning. You were quietly shifted to a different standing before Allah. That shift had to settle before anything external could rearrange itself. Ibn ʿArabi explains that Allah protects the servant by moving the unseen ahead of the seen. If visible changes happened immediately, the servant would cling to outcomes instead of transformation. By delaying the visible, Allah allows the inner work to stabilize. This is why early stages of divine response feel lonely, not because Allah is distant, but because the servant is between worlds. Old attachments no longer hold, but new realities have not yet appeared. The mind struggles here. It wants proof. It wants explanation. It wants to know what is coming next. Ibn ʿArabi warns that demanding clarity too early interrupts the process. The unseen must complete its work before the seen can follow without distortion. This is also why, after sincere actions, relationships often feel strained or misaligned. Not because people have changed, but because the servant's position has. Conversations no longer land the same way. Certain environments feel heavier. Certain ambitions feel hollow. These are not signs of loss. They are signs of incompatibility surfacing. Ibn ʿArabi teaches that Allah removes from the servant whatever no longer matches their inner state, but He does so gradually to preserve mercy. When the unseen shifts, the seen must catch up. That catch-up period is uncomfortable because it exposes what no longer fits. Many people misinterpret this discomfort as punishment. Ibn Arabi calls it evidence. Evidence that movement has already begun. The unseen is not chaotic. It is precise. Every internal shift has a corresponding external adjustment waiting to unfold. But the timing of that unfolding is not controlled by impatience. It is controlled by stability. If visible change arrived before stability, the servant would break under the weight of it. This is why Allah allows confusion without harm, uncertainty without collapse, pressure without destruction. These are signs that the unseen is actively reorganizing reality around the servant's new position. What you are feeling now is not stagnation. It is preparation happening out of sight. Ibn Arabi teaches that Allah hides beginnings to protect endings. When beginnings are hidden, the servant remains humble. When endings arrive, they arrive intact. This is why restraint matters now. Speaking too much, explaining too early, seeking validation, or forcing action can interfere with unseen alignment. The unseen responds best to trust, not urgency. The servant who understands this waits without resentment. They walk forward without demanding certainty. They accept not knowing as part of knowing. This is not passivity. It is discipline. Understand this carefully. Nothing you are experiencing is random. Nothing is happening late. Nothing has been forgotten. What is unseen is moving ahead of you, clearing what must be cleared, arranging what must be arranged, removing what cannot follow you forward. When the scene finally shifts, it will feel sudden to others, but to you, it will feel inevitable, because you will recognize it as something that began long before it appeared. When you are ready, say, "Next," and I will expand Lesson 8. Not everyone is allowed to understand this moment with the same depth and intensity. 8. Not everyone is allowed to understand this moment. Expanded, deep, gripping Ibn Arabi perspective to 5,000 characters. Ibn Arabi teaches a principle that protects the heart from confusion and resentment. Understanding itself is a gift that is not distributed equally. Allah does not grant clarity to everyone at the same time, nor does He intend every truth to be shared, explained, or validated by others. This is where many sincere people stumble. They experience an inner shift, a gravity, a seriousness that feels undeniable, and then they try to explain it. They speak to friends. They look for confirmation. They want someone to say, "Yes, this makes sense." And when that does not happen, doubt creeps in. Ibn Arabi says, this doubt is not a sign that the experience is false. It is a sign that the experience was not meant to be public. Allah veils understanding selectively, not as punishment, but as protection. Some hearts are not prepared to hear certain realities. Some minds would distort what they cannot carry. Some tongues would trivialize what must remain weighty. So Allah limits access. This is why you may notice that when you speak about what you are sensing, people respond with confusion, dismissal, or advice that feels shallow. They reduce it, they rationalize it. They try to pull you back into familiar language. This is not because they are wrong. It is because they are not positioned where you are. Ibn Arabi teaches that Allah does not invite everyone to the same depth at the same time. Depth requires responsibility. Responsibility requires readiness. When readiness is absent, understanding is withheld not out of cruelty, but out of mercy. If everyone understood what you are standing in, the burden would be unbearable. This is why solitude often increases after sincere alignment. Not physical isolation necessarily, but experiential solitude. You are among people, yet inwardly alone. Conversations continue, but something essential cannot be translated. This solitude is not abandonment. It is containment. Ibn Arabi warns against forcing others to understand what Allah has not opened for them. Doing so creates friction, invites ego, and weakens sincerity. The truth loses its shape when exposed prematurely. Some realities must mature in silence. This is also why comparison becomes dangerous at this stage. Looking at others and wondering why they do not feel what you feel, or why you cannot return to what once satisfied you. Ibn Arabi says this comparison pulls the heart backward into levels it has already outgrown. Growth isolates before it integrates. When Allah allows a servant to perceive something others cannot, it is not a declaration of superiority, it is a restriction. The servant must now walk more carefully, speak less, and listen more. Their margin for distraction shrinks. Their tolerance for falsehood decreases. This is not privilege. It is accountability. Understanding without humility becomes arrogance. So Allah balances insight with loneliness, clarity with restraint, and awareness with silence. You may feel the urge to explain yourself, to justify why you are changing, to defend why certain things no longer fit. Ibn Arabi advises against this. Explanation is often an attempt to relieve discomfort, not to serve truth. Truth does not need to be defended. It needs to be lived. This is why Allah often removes witnesses at this stage, not forever, but temporarily, until the servant can stand without applause, agreement, or reassurance. If this moment were meant to be shared, Allah would have given you language that others could receive. The fact that words fail is evidence that this is still forming. What is forming inside you is not ready to be named. Naming it too early would reduce it. So Allah keeps it ambiguous, heavy, quiet. This ambiguity is not confusion. It is incubation. Ibn Arabi teaches that what is meant for you will eventually become clear in action, not explanation. Others will understand later not because you told them, but because the effects will speak without words. Until then, your task is not to convince. It is to remain sincere. Not everyone is allowed to understand this moment, but everyone is allowed to misunderstand it. And that is part of the protection. When you are ready, say next, and I will expand Lesson 9, Gratitude Seals the Deed, with the same depth and intensity. 9. Gratitude Seals the Deed. Expanded, deep, gripping, Ibn Arabi perspective to 5,000 characters. Ibn Arabi teaches that every sincere action remains vulnerable until it is sealed by gratitude. Many people assume gratitude comes after results appear. Ibn Arabi reverses this understanding. Gratitude is not a reaction to outcomes. It is a protection for sincerity. A deed may be accepted, yet its effects can be weakened if the heart becomes attached to recognition, speed, or entitlement. Gratitude prevents that corrosion. Gratitude in Ibn Arabi's teaching is not excitement. It is not verbal praise alone. It is restraint. It is the ability to remain grounded when the unseen has already begun to move. It is the refusal to rush Allah's timing with expectations. The most dangerous moment after a sincere act is not failure. It is anticipation. Anticipation quietly asks, "What will this bring me?" Gratitude says, "Whatever comes is enough." This difference determines whether the deed continues to unfold or quietly stalls. Ibn Arabi explains that gratitude anchors the servant in humility. Without it, the ego subtly returns, even if the action itself was pure. The servant begins to watch life too closely, interpreting every event as a sign, demanding confirmation, measuring progress. This monitoring weakens trust. Gratitude releases the need to monitor. When a servant is grateful, they do not chase outcomes. They allow outcomes to approach them. This posture signals readiness for continuity, not just response. Allah does not merely respond to gratitude. He extends what gratitude protects. This is why some people receive an initial opening and then feel it fade. Not because Allah withdrew, but because gratitude was replaced by expectation. The heart shifted from receiving to demanding. Ibn Arabi says that gratitude keeps the servant small in their own eyes, even as their responsibility grows. Smallness here does not mean weakness. It means clarity. The servant understands that nothing they did obligated Allah. Whatever arrived was mercy, not transaction. This understanding stabilizes the heart. You may notice that after what you did, you feel an instinct to stay quiet, to avoid speaking too soon, to resist celebration. This is not fear. It is gratitude expressing itself as caution. The heart knows that exposure too early can invite distortion. Gratitude protects by concealment. Ibn ʿArabi teaches that Allah loves when a servant receives without announcement. When gratitude is present, the servant does not turn blessings into identity. They do not define themselves by what happened. They remain available, not inflated. This availability is critical. Once the servant becomes inflated by significance, growth slows. The heart becomes rigid. But gratitude keeps the heart flexible, receptive, and responsive. True gratitude also accepts delay without resentment. It does not rush Allah to complete what has begun. It understands that what unfolds slowly often lasts longer. Impatience, even disguised as eagerness, signals insecurity. Gratitude signals trust. There is another layer Ibn ʿArabi emphasizes. Gratitude transforms responsibility into mercy. When the servant is grateful, increased accountability does not feel like burden, it feels like guidance. The same weight that would crush an ungrateful heart becomes manageable. This is why gratitude must deepen now, not later. Not because you received everything you wanted, but because you were allowed to act sincerely at all. Ibn ʿArabi says the ability to act in truth is itself a gift greater than any outcome that follows. Many people want results without transformation. You were given transformation first. Gratitude recognizes this order. Do not rush to name what is happening. Do not demand clarity before it is time. Do not compare your unfolding with anyone else's. Let gratitude hold the moment steady. When gratitude seals a deed, it becomes resistant to envy, doubt, and interference. What is sealed does not leak. What is sealed continues to work quietly, even when the servant is not watching. This is the wisdom. Gratitude does not speed destiny. It stabilizes it. And a stable unfolding reaches farther than a rushed one. When you are ready, say next. And I will expand Lesson 10, what changed was not Allah's will, but your position with the same depth and intensity. 10. What changed was not Allah's will, but your position. Expanded, deep, gripping, Ibn ʿArabi perspective to 8,000 characters. Ibn ʿArabi brings this entire journey to a point that is both humbling and sobering. Allah did not change. His will did not shift. What changed was where you are standing in relation to it. This distinction is critical because misunderstanding it creates pride, confusion, or despair. Understanding it creates steadiness. Many people say, Allah changed my destiny. Ibn ʿArabi would correct this language gently but firmly. Destiny unfolds according to divine knowledge that is complete and unaltered. What moves is the servant's capacity to receive what was always possible. Think of the sun. It does not move closer or farther to warm you. You move into or out of its light. Allah's will is constant. The servant's position is not. What you did not persuade Allah to act differently. It aligned you with a layer of unfolding that you were not previously able to enter. Alignment is not negotiation. It is readiness. This is why this moment feels serious. When position changes, responsibility changes. Nearness to Allah is not comfort. It is exposure. The closer you stand to truth, the more clearly you see yourself, and the less you can hide behind excuses. Ibn ʿArabi teaches that Allah's mercy often appears as increased clarity rather than increased ease. Ease can come later. Clarity must come first. Without clarity, ease corrupts. With clarity, even hardship refines. You may feel this now. Things you once tolerated feel intolerable. Distractions that once soothed you now feel empty. Words you used to say easily now feel heavy in your mouth. This is not because life has become harsher, it is because your position has shifted upward and higher positions have thinner air. This is where many people try to go backward. They mistake the discomfort of elevation for a mistake. They try to return to old habits, old explanations, old comforts. Ibn ʿArabi warns that this backward pull is the ego's last attempt to reclaim familiarity. Familiarity feels safe, even when it is limiting. But once position changes, returning costs more than staying. What once satisfied you will now exhaust you. What once distracted you will now hollow you out. This is not punishment. It is incompatibility. Your sincerity did not earn you special treatment. It placed you under greater coherence. When coherence increases, inconsistencies become unbearable. Life tightens not to trap you, but to align you. This is why the margin for error feels smaller now. Choices echo louder. Delays feel heavier. Words matter more. This heightened sensitivity is not anxiety. It is awareness sharpening. Ibn ʿArabi explains that Allah increases awareness before He increases capacity. Awareness without capacity feels intense, but capacity grows through patience, restraint, and continued sincerity. Do not rush to interpret every challenge as a test. Some challenges are simply the result of standing closer to reality. Reality does not bend to comfort. It reveals. Here is the crucial correction. You are not chosen above others. You are positioned for a task suited to your readiness. Tasks differ. Paths differ. Nearness is not a reward, it is an assignment. Assignments come with limits. You cannot live loosely anymore. You cannot speak carelessly. You cannot treat time casually. What others can afford to ignore, you now must answer for. This is not superiority. It is stewardship. Ibn ʿArabi teaches that when Allah brings a servant closer, He removes excess from their life. Excess conversation, excess desire, excess explanation, excess noise. What remains is essential. Essential living feels bare at first, then it feels true. You may notice a desire to simplify not as an aesthetic choice, but as a necessity. Fewer words, fewer attachments, fewer justifications. This is the shape of a new position taking hold. Another danger appears here: spiritual entitlement. The thought, subtle and quiet, that because you acted sincerely, life should now cooperate smoothly. Ibn ʿArabi dismantles this idea completely. Nearness increases obligation, not entitlement. The servant becomes more accountable, not more protected from effort. Protection exists, but it is protective guidance, not protective comfort. This is why the future now feels less negotiable. You cannot wander aimlessly without consequence. You cannot delay truth without inner friction. You cannot pretend not to know what you know. This narrowing is not loss of freedom, it is freedom from confusion. When position changes, destiny feels closer, not because it rushes, but because resistance decreases. You stop fighting what is necessary. You stop arguing with what is real. You move with what unfolds instead of against it. Ibn ʿArabi says that the sign of true alignment is not excitement, but acceptance without resignation. You accept what is asked of you without collapsing under it. You carry weight without bitterness. You walk forward without demanding clarity at every step. This is maturity. Understand this finally. Allah did not respond to your action by changing Himself. He responded by revealing more of what was already written for you because you were finally able to bear it. Your position changed. Your responsibility deepened. Your path narrowed. Your clarity increased. This is not the end of something. It is the beginning of living without illusion. From here on, growth will be quieter, slower, and more consequential. The rewards will be subtler, the lessons sharper, the guidance firmer. You will not always feel uplifted, but you will feel aligned. And alignment, Ibn ʿArabi reminds us, is the greatest mercy a servant can receive. If this message reached you, don't rush away from it. Not everything Allah allows you to hear is meant to excite you. Some words are meant to steady you. Ibn ʿArabi reminds us that the most dangerous mistake after sincerity is to look backward for confirmation. When Allah moves a servant forward, He does not always leave signs behind. Sometimes, the only proof is the weight you now carry. Do not measure what is happening by ease. Do not demand clarity before obedience. And do not explain yourself to those who are not meant to walk this path. What you did was seen. What followed was intentional. And what is unfolding now requires patience, humility, and restraint. Your task is not to force outcomes. It is to remain truthful. Walk quietly. Stay grateful. Protect the sincerity that brought you here. Because once a servant's position changes, returning to illusion becomes harder than moving forward in truth. And if Allah has brought you this far, He did not do so to abandon you. He did so because you are ready to walk with awareness. Even when the path is narrow, even when the future is silent, even when no one else understands, remain steady, remain sincere, and trust that what is coming does not need to announce itself, to arrive exactly on time.